This is Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I'm here with Aaron Mccollum, and he is a third generation from the Project Talent MK experiments on building super soldiers and other human beings that have capabilities far beyond the normal.
I would class myself as being part of the third generation of what was known as Project Talent, but then my real role was actually being, you could say, bred and trained for a certain project that was known as Project Seagate. But of course, there's so much that I've uncovered and discovered, and through family and other means, that really makes this such a rabbit hole. To give myself one label is kind of difficult, but I guess for the people, I mean, I went through the training process of Project Talent, which is kind of like the recruiting slash talent, you could say, agency that the government uses for finding people that they want to use for certain projects.
Okay, Aaron, we have met before, and we went over the Gulf of Aden and what was going on there with the Stargate and so on. At the moment, I'm not sure if there's any new activity that you're aware of that's going on there. I have gotten some information, not a lot, and some verification of what you were talking about, and we also got sort of a nod from Bob Dean recently in my interview, although he was very careful in the way that he acknowledged that information.
He sure was. The information, they've really put a huge lockdown on what's going on. I think they realized that a lot of information was, so to speak, getting leaked from many sources, and the security there has increased immensely. As far as updated information, I don't have a lot, but what I can tell you is that from what I was told by a source of naval intelligence is that there's actually two, you could say, perimeters that have been created. They have a general perimeter that is what the public is being known as kind of the security zone to stop the piracy. Then within that zone, what I was told was about in a 3-mile diameter circumference are other ships that are watching over a certain area of the Gulf. From what I've been told, this is the general area of where this Stargate anomaly is occurring, where it's opening up, closing up, and whatever else is transpiring there, which are theories I talked about in the first interview, whether it's for good or bad or something that's out of their control and it's really just fear. I'm leaning more towards it's something that's out of their control, and that's why it's such a lockdown, and here's why. There's a website that was shown to me that, I don't remember the name of the website, but it basically shows all commercial vessel traffic that happens in the world. And if you get on that website and you can zoom in on the area of the Gulf of Aden, there's no traffic is shown. They've completely blocked it out. This is a website anybody can access. In fact, remind me and I'll send you that so you can look at that. So it's very interesting.
Fascinating, yeah.
There has been a few more Al-Qaeda, or CIA Al-Qaeda as I like to say, operations happen there. Just recently there was a supposed planned bombing of the UK embassy, but it had failed. So there is some more military movement by the USA and the UK. It seems to me that they're keeping things quiet, but the military movement is still being flooded into Yemen. So I imagine that as things do come in waves of information, that we will be finding out more here soon. I would guess within the next month or so, there's going to be some more information revealed that will definitely show signs of other things going on there.
Okay, and just to say that this is May of 2010 that we're doing this interview, just to put that on the books. Okay, so let's actually go back though, because this interview is really about you and the background to the other interview, and we're doing them sort of in the reverse. This is where we're actually going to tell your story. And so if you would outline what it was like from an early age when you first started having experiences or you know, whatever you want to call it, and go from there.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it's good. In a way, let me just say this, it's really good that we're doing this now, because since our last interview, even the last time we spoke, I have been working on some more metaphysical means that were given to me that have actually opened up a lot of my memories, and then worked through some family members that have revealed a lot. So, I guess we should just start at the beginning. First memory that I have, which for a while was causing me to wake up with nightmares and just thinking I was insane. When I was 3 years old, I was taken to a facility by a family member, one of my grandmothers. I don't remember where the facility is at. I know that I was living in Oregon at the time, and at this facility was a pool. The pool, I remember it being just kind of like, it seemed like almost like a hospital type setting. I remember a lot of white, and somehow I was immobilized. I don't know how they did it, because from what I was told by my mother and father, I could swim before I could walk. So whether it was through using some kind of drug, I don't know. But the point is that I was placed into the pool. I remember a burning sensation, which I now know relates to the feeling of drowning. And then the next thing I remember is laying on a table, coughing up water, and being quite scared. It's still a pretty intense emotional memory. And then hearing these people that were standing around me saying something like, "We've got one," or "He fits," something of that nature. That's when things began. That's when that was my initial evaluation. It's kind of a young age, because most people in my situation, the average age is around 5, 6 years old. But from what I've learned later on, my situation, I don't want to say it's unique, but it's definitely interesting. After that, you know, the rest of that time, 4 years old, I really don't remember much. But then when we get to around the age 5 is when my initial training really began. A lot of the memories are kind of fragmented, but what I'll do is I'll give you the best of what I have, of what I absolutely remember. The place that my family lived at in Oregon when I was that age, we had a military facility that was nearby. I don't remember the name of the facility, but I know that it was a place that my father worked at. He wasn't in the military at the time, but it was a government job. I wasn't taken there by my father, but I was taken there by someone, and then I would be taken to this house with this gentleman that I know was much older, and I know that his name was Mike. I've gotten confirmation of this name and this place through my sister. At this house, I was put through various things. One of the things I remember was being put into, it wasn't necessarily a closet, but it was definitely a small room, almost like it was a constructed compartment that was quite small, soundproof and pitch black. I would be put in there, and I would be in there for hours at a time. It was what I am discovering now, you could say, a sensory deprivation chamber. Now, being 5 years old and being put into one of these, I mean, you can imagine what it must have been like, the memory or the imagination, being in the dark. And I went through this process a lot. One of the other things I remember, and I don't know from point A to point B how I got up to this point, but I remember being asked to walk across it was like a driveway, but the rocks, it was all gravel. And the rocks were very hot. Summers down there were very hot, so it was just, I believe that they were just heating naturally through the sun. And I had to walk across it. And I remember walking across it and not reacting, and then being told to stop halfway and look down, and I'm barefoot, and then walking across. So what transpired prior to that to make me be able to not react to the heat, to the pain, I don't remember, but I definitely know that that was a fact. And I would have burn marks on the bottom of my feet, but not react to them.
When you were put into the chamber, do you remember being afraid?
You know, that's an interesting question. I imagine at the time I was, but I don't really recognize or quite even understand that emotion of fear now. There were a lot of emotions that were taken out of me that, and this is what we can get into a little bit later on, that I've almost had to mimic in a way, to fit into the world I'm in now since December of 2005.
You had this sort of sensory training.
Sensory and definitely pain training, but then there's other things I remember, such as being with a group of kids that were my age and being taken to what is referred to now, from knowing later on, is referred to as the camps. The camps can be anywhere from a weekend to a week to a full summer. What these camps are government-funded training camps where you do a wide variety of things, everything from learning basic things such as rappelling, survival, even how to sharpen knives the proper way, using a knife, and weapons training, and even hand-to-hand combat. From 5 until 8, this was definitely something I remember doing in certain points, such as, you know, having to go out and learn what to eat, how to survive, how to even make, you know, you could say a fort, or, you know, like a makeshift tent. One memory that really stands out: when I was 8 years old, I was taken, and I believe I was with some family. I remember seeing my sister at this place, but it was actually up in Northern California. I don't exactly remember where. But where this place was at, they had a river that ran very, very cold, so I believe it had to have been during the wintertime. Now, who exactly did this, I don't know, but I'm getting to understand why this happened. Where I was for 7 days straight, repeatedly, each day for a certain amount of time, was actually dunked, forcibly dunked over and over again into this water. Throughout, and you know, I'll get into this later on, but throughout the years of childhood of this training that I was going through, a lot of it was very cold water submersion. I don't know if my core body temperature is related to that, but my body core temperature now averages between 96.5 and 97.6. So, degree to 2 degrees colder than what the normal body core temperature is.
But you don't have to wear a jacket as often as other people. Is that right? You're
not at all.
You don't feel cold as much.
Right.
Okay.
Cold weather doesn't really bother me that much. But at the same time, hot weather doesn't really bother. I acclimate, I mean, almost instantly to any kind of weather condition. Then the more violent, I guess, being subjected to violence to really create, for me to be numb to it, that really kicked off between 8 and 9 years old. There was a lot that happened there. There was a place I was taken to with, again, the same group of kids, about maybe a dozen of us, where we were taken into this, there was actually this dugout that was made. I remember the dugout, and they called it the pit, where we actually had to go in, and now these are 8, 9-year-old, and we were told to fight. And it was fight until one of them gave up, or till it was broken up. Pretty bloody.
Were they all boys, or boys and girls?
It was all boys. It wasn't until maybe 8 years later when I started working, when there were some girls that were integrated into this train program that I was a part of.
So what about your parents? What is their recall? Are you in touch with your mother, for example?
I'm in touch with my mother, but we don't really talk. It's not that I don't want to, but because of a lot that's come to surface that I've spoken with some family members, my mother is programmed in such a way that for me to bring this information to her could have really bad effects.
Well, but you're out doing radio shows. You did our interview. I mean,
and she has absolutely no idea
okay.
of any of it.
Okay.
It's not that I've kept it from her. It's just it hasn't been relayed to her.
Mm-hmm.
My father, we've been in contact closely about this subject matter. Some of it he's having a hard time with, but then other things he is accepting. I introduced him to, it turns out that him and Dave Corso, I didn't know this until a little bit after Awake and Aware, that they actually lived in the same town. And in fact, my dad and Dave have history. My dad has been dealing with a lot of blocked memories. So you could say, because of the history that my dad and Dave have, that he was part of the, you could say, as we have deemed it, the pre-generation program, kind of the prototype of what became what Duncan O'Finian was part of, and myself and others.
Mm-hmm. Was your father an officer in the military?
No, he was enlisted, but he was in the Marine Corps, and he did operations in the same locations as Dave did, and they even encountered each other in other parts of the world.
During this time, you're going through these training sequences, and you're being taken there by someone, because you're a child, right? So who's taking you?
Well, mainly until I got to a little bit older, until I got to be 9, it was this guy known as Mike, who knew, or my father knew him, but I really believe from talking with my father now that he was not aware of what was taking place. Because, you know, these camps, these training facilities, they are located all over the country, and there are parents who are not involved or did not have history of being involved, where, you know, the child is taken to maybe a summer camp or what they call outdoor school. They'll see them get on the same bus or get in the same carpool, but they're not taken to that location. They're taken elsewhere.
Okay.
So that does indeed happen.
And are some of your memories about going in, being separated from the other children?
Yes.
Or going, do you have any memories of that?
I do. I have some pretty intense memories of, well, one that I should have mentioned before, so let's backtrack. When I was 5, probably one of the most intense memories I have as a child was waking up during an operation procedure. It was a dark room. I just remember seeing people in the obviously the operating type of garb, the masks, and I remember screaming. Now, things are a little fuzzy, but what I do remember is seeing this machine above me with these wires and these tubes going into my left knee, and then all of a sudden hearing commotion and then knocking back out. So I woke up during some kind of procedure they were doing to me.
Okay, but what is the significance of your left knee? Do you have any special sensation or anything there?
I have a lot of interesting things that happen physically with me, and I've had a lot of different surgeries where I would see some of the medical records and then they would wind up disappearing. In fact, to this day, even up to, what was it, a year ago, a year and a half ago, I went to go get an MRI done and a CT scan, some x-rays done, because I was having some unusual things occurring with my shoulder, my arm, even with my neck, my head, and my hips. at first I would ask to see the images, and they would tell me, oh, they're getting processed, you can come back later to see them. And then I would go down to the records office, and they would have some of my medical record, but they wouldn't have any of the images. So I've never been allowed to see any of my x-ray or any of the scanned images of my body.
Okay. Okay, so let's go from the age of, I don't know, you said at 9 you were being given this training that seemed kind of to start verging on the military.
Yes.
So at what point, you know, did this escalate, and do you have memories in between that age, say in the age of whenever you enlisted? Did you enlist?
Oh, yes.
You enlisted,
well,
didn't you?
Enlisted would imply that I volunteered,
Uh-huh.
when indeed I was told. I was directed. I will get in that in a second, but let's go with a few other things that I do remember.
Okay.
One that I've talked about before to several other people, I don't remember if I mentioned to you, was in this process, you go through what is evaluations. In this evaluation, what happens is one or whomever passes goes up to the next level, and the rest, well, I don't know what they do with them, but you don't see the kids that you were with. And I'll give you an example. When I was 9, this is when we were living out in the desert, I was again taken with the same group of kids, and we were taken out to this field. It was a pretty large field, mostly flat, had some sage, a few rocks, and out there they had maybe 20 or 30 of these large, I would say there were maybe 3 or 4 foot by 4 foot boards, like plywood, that were scattered all throughout this huge field, acres and acres. Myself and the other kids, by this time there was, I think, 8 of us. We were all put into a line, shoulder to shoulder, but with about 20 feet distance from each other. I'm sure we were given task directions. I don't remember, but what I do remember is that we were then to walk out into this field. I see a board. Now I'd walked by a few boards, but I see one, and now I usually go right-handed, but for some reason I decided to pick up a corner with my left hand. Maybe it was at the angle. But the weird thing is, when I picked it up, there was a rattlesnake underneath this board, and it bit me. It actually bit me right here. I still have a scar or a mark that I'm guessing it may be from it, because I remember being bit right here on my knuckle. I don't remember anything after that. As far as, did I go to the hospital? Did I get antivenom? What happened? What I remember, which I don't know if it was a few weeks or a few months after, was that the other kids I never saw again. I have no idea what happened to them. But I moved up to the next level. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of test that exactly is. Was I supposed to get bitten by the snake? Is that some kind of ritualistic evaluation? I don't know. But a 9-year-old kid, and I was a scrawny kid, so a 9-year-old scrawny kid getting bitten by a rattlesnake, you'd think that I would remember at least something. I mean, it would be a pretty traumatic experience, but nothing.
So you went through that, then what happened?
Okay, then I went up to the next step, where I was introduced to another group of kids who had moved up through their training processes. Obviously, they were part of something else, and then we were brought together.
And are you in Northern California, or are you in Oregon at this point?
I was in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon, but on occasion, I would be taken down to either Northern or Southern California to go through other training. I did a lot on the coast, where I was actually doing some interaction with dolphins. That was a whole other side of things. When I was taken down to California during summertime, it was all about working with water, working with dolphins.
So, but you were taken away from your parents, or your parents went down there with the family?
We all went together. It was a
trips?
vacation, but then I would be taken separately. My sister, again, I don't want to get too much into like my brother and my sister, but let's just say that my sister would be taken to another location, and then my brother would. And sometimes I would return to Oregon, and my sister would stay, or my brother and I would return, my sister would return and I would stay. They mixed it up.
Okay, but your sister has been through a program like you, and your brother is an autistic who is absolutely brilliant and working on the secret space program. So let's at least say that.
Well, yeah, okay, I don't want to say names, but yes, I will say this. My sister was part of a separate program that she was selected at a very young age.
And
to
she
be
has
brought
some
up in.
memories?
She's got more than I do.
Okay.
My sister and I spent several days together doing nothing but talking about this. She revealed more to me than I had any idea of as far as her. And then we in turn discussed our brother, who is still actively involved. But it's a difficult and complicated situation that we're trying to figure out how to deal with.
Okay. Okay, so from there, you said you joined another group of kids who somehow made it up to another level. And what did that level consist of at that point?
This level was interesting. This level consisted of a lot of dark things, and I still don't know why. We were introduced to this occult type group that had their own encampments that we would go to, where a lot of dark rituals were practiced. There was this location that specifically my sister and I would be taken to by these older people. I don't remember how much older. And where we were taken, and there was this pathway that we would have to go down to that was very dark, and you would almost feel drained in some way. Then a lot of what I originally thought were hallucinations, where I was seeing things, I was having to drink certain things or having some violent reactions to me. I was becoming a very different person. I was going through a lot of pain. I remember a lot of pain. I just remember a lot of dark, you could say evil, ritualistic things that I was subjected to.
It sounds like the typical Illuminati indoctrination of a young person.
I would say so, yes.
And I'm assuming you're not saying it, but it sounds like there were sexual rituals involved here.
Yes, there was. But that also was going on at a younger age, where I would be taken to which was a Catholic church, which there is, not to say that the whole Catholic Church is evil, but there is a sect of the Catholic Church that's run by someone that's known as the Black Pope that has very much involvement with a lot of the projects done all around the world. The Black Pope in the black side of the Vatican has had a very vested interest in monoculture projects. So yes, I was subjected to dark sexual rituals and other things at this certain church where I would have to go to at night. There was a lot that transpired at night. Again, when I got older, and even when I was 11, 12, we would be given assignments, training exercises. And so I would have people come over to my house. My mother was under the impression that this was just like a sleepover, young boy sleepover. But we would have gear that was provided to us. I'm talking like, imagine tactical gear for a young kid. And we would have various assignments to go steal a car from a specific location, from a specific place, and deliver it to another place. Also, invading into a house and grabbing something else. They were testing our skills. Could we get in and could we get out quietly? Could we work cohesive as a group?
Okay, and how many kids were in a group?
At this point, there were 6.
Okay, and do you remember those children at all?
I remember their faces. I don't remember their names.
Okay.
I do remember faces.
Okay. So, fast forward, is there anything else before the time when you were told to enlist?
There is one other incident that I would like to share. We had a house that was funded by the government. It was like a little, you could say it was a getaway house for R&R that we could use at any time we wanted. And it was located on a lake up in northern Oregon, and there was one week in particular during the summertime where they gave us a full week off, and they told us to go to the house. This house, literally, you walk in and it was filled with alcohol. Now, this is when I'm 16. It's filled with alcohol, it was filled with food, it was even filled with any drugs. Anything you wanted, they provided. Now, let me just try to make this quick. We had a boathouse. It was literally on the lake. And of course, the boathouse rested on the water. So this will explain there was no air gaps underneath the boathouse. It was just solid water. A natural rock formation caused like this snake-like form, almost like a cavern that you could swim from one side of the boathouse to the other. Well, I always loved being in the water and holding my breath for a long time. We had a platform that we jump off of. Now, I jumped off the platform on one of the many times I did, and I went underneath. And then I simply, the next thing I remember is resurfacing. But the problem is when I resurfaced, there were other people on this training team, the other kids. Two of the guys were frantically in the water looking for me. And this time we did have two women, two girls that were part of it, and they were a little bit freaked out. And I said, what's the problem? One of the guys who I do remember, his name David, said, we thought you had drowned. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we went underneath there, Aaron. We looked for you. You were nowhere to be seen. I said, well, how long was I gone? And David's response was about 12 minutes. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what transpired. But I do remember them telling me that, and they were definitely in a panic.
Okay.
That happened maybe a month before I was finally told where I was going to go, as far as the military is concerned.
So how were you told where you were going to go? By the military or by your father or who?
No, I received a package in the mail, big manila envelope. I opened it up and it had some documents in there with some instructions saying, come to this address, and I had a car at this time, saying, come to this address at this time on this day. And it happened to be right across the river from where I lived in Portland, Oregon, in Vancouver, Washington. So I went there, and it was a Coast Guard recruiting office. With everything that I had been doing prior to that, I'd never even heard of the Coast Guard. I had never heard, I didn't even know that this was a branch of the military. So I go in, and there was a few other people there. I'm guessing that they were, prospective prospects, looking to join. And as I walk in, a gentleman walks up to me. I didn't even introduce myself, and he goes, hello, Aaron, we've been expecting you. He shakes my hand, he takes me into a back room. They shut the door. And there was him, a senior chief, which is a high-ranking enlisted member of the Coast Guard, E9, and there was one other person there. I don't remember if they were in uniform or not. But they sat me down and they proceeded to tell me that based on everything that had happened prior to that, all the evaluation, all the testing, all the training, that it had been decided that I would fit to be in the Coast Guard because of future operations that had already been selected for me. And that I would be joining the Coast Guard at a certain time. And that date was selected to be, it was September 30th of 96. So 2 years, they're telling me 2 years in advance and I'm going to be in the military. And
okay, what was your reaction?
Fine.
Why? Why were you so open to it, do you know?
I grew up in a way to where violence, training, being told what to do was normal. Most 5-year-old kids, most kids are playing with G.I. Joes, Legos, learning t-ball, soccer. When I was that age, I was handling knives, learning how to take apart shotguns, and learning rappelling, cold water training, ice water submersion. I was doing basically the waterboarding. This was normal for me. I didn't know any other life. So for me to say fine was just, okay, this is the next step in the process of what I've been doing my whole life.
Okay. So it never occurred to you, even at that age, though, to say no or to rebel?
Not at all.
Did you discuss it with your parents at all?
It wasn't really a discussion. It was, and I didn't tell them until I was a year later. I don't remember if I was instructed. I don't think I was instructed. I think it was just something I did on my own. I don't know. They may have already known. Who knows? But no, when the time came, I told them, I said, listen, in September 30th, which was the summer after I graduated from graduated from high school, that's a whole nother interesting thing. I said, I'm going, and this is what I'm doing. And the reaction from my father was, I think, of acceptance, and my mother, she had a very hesitant reaction. I'm not quite, there's still a lot of fuzziness, but I do remember that her reaction was a little bit worrisome.
Okay, but did you even consider going to college?
No. College was not an option.
Because you'd been trained in a certain way, or because you didn't consider it academically? Were you...
I'd like to quote a General Robert Regale, who recalled me back in 2008, when he sat me down at a desk at Camp Pendleton and told me, goes, Aaron, you will never have a normal job until we have used you to the fullest extent. You are an investment and an asset for purposes that are yet to be revealed, or something to that extent. Basically, he said that I will never be able to have a normal job, and in a way, he's right, because of the way I've been blacklisted. I could get into so many details of me actually trying to use the VA because of my real military career to go to college, which was completely banned. I was blacklisted from that. I have tried to get normal jobs when I was first figuring out who I was, even before I really knew who I was, when I just thought I was insane, where I would get hired on to high-paying jobs, and then the next thing you know it, they would receive some phone call, and then I would be called in and said, we can't. I have been basically made, in a way, a slave to the pension that I receive, which I got under very unusual conditions as well.
Okay, so let's go back to at least, just very briefly at any rate, you said something about high school itself. So what was strange about high school?
I remember being called into the principal's office about a month before I was supposed to graduate. Now, I didn't really attend high school. In fact, for most of the last 2 years of high school, junior and senior year, I wasn't at school. It was training. That was it. I would go
Were you
weeks.
conscious of the fact that you weren't in high school? I mean, with this, were you...
I was registered at the high school, but I would receive instructions, and it was during the time when school was going on, because training was really getting picked up. So yeah, I was aware, and I didn't care because I knew that I had to follow the instructions that I was given by the people who were covering the logistics of everything that I was supposed to be doing. And I guess I just somehow knew that I would be taken care of. I don't really know how I knew, I just knew. So to go back, I get called in the principal's office, who obviously had no knowledge of the situation, who sat me down and said, we can't graduate you. He said, you have, and he showed me, something crazy like, 158 some odd days of unexcused absences, and that was the ones where they just simply were able to, where they caught it. Because I know that I was gone a lot more days than that. And I remember just shrugging it off. And then something obviously happened, because then the next day, no, it wasn't the next day, shortly after that, and it actually made the local newspaper, everything was kept on computer. Even though this is 1996, everything was kept on computers at this time at the high school I was at. Their data banks got wiped out. Everything was lost.
Okay.
So they had no alternative. They didn't have the proof to say, well, this student, Aaron Mccollum, has has enough unexcused absences that technically we should just expel him, but instead we're just not going to graduate him.
So what happened? Are you saying they graduated you?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did. I received a diploma and everything.
Okay. And do you have a record of that yourself or not?
I used to, but a lot of the property that I had was confiscated. Everything that I owned prior, from childhood up until December 2005, everything that I owned was taken.
When was it taken?
At some point between, I'm guessing, July of 2005 and December of 2005.
Meaning it was stolen from your house, or?
Meaning the ones that I was working for took it. It was obviously,
Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I know, we're really getting ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, but just to fill in the blank here, so that we don't miss it, who were you working for in 2005 such that they took what you had? Do you know?
Well, I was working I was working two sides of things. I was wearing my hat as Petty Officer Mccollum in the U.S. Coast Guard, and I was wearing my other hat as serial number 13-03957 for Project Seagate, which was an underwater facility located off the west side of Puerto Rico.
Okay, so let's go back now. You've enlisted in the military. The 2 years have passed. It's time for you to report. I'm assuming you report. Is that what happens?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and at this point, you graduated from high school?
Yes.
Okay, so was it right after your graduation? Did you graduate in June and then report in September?
No, I graduated, well, yes, I did. I graduated in June and then I reported in September, yes. I literally, 3 weeks after I turned 18. I turned 18 on September 6th of 96, and then that same month on the 30th I reported.
Okay, so you reported, and then what happened?
Well, I went to regular Coast Guard boot camp, and then I reported to a unit that, even when I reported the unit, the commanding officer there thought it was quite odd that I was there, because at this time, this unit that I was at, nobody whipped there straight out of boot camp. This was a very a special unit that did a whole wide range of things, from law enforcement, some drug interdiction, but mostly special op search and rescue. So, and this, because we don't really need to get into the regular Coast Guard side, but I'll just say this: every unit that I went to be regular Aaron Mccollum Coast Guard were special units that were very hard to get, and I never selected them. They would be selected for me. And even on 3 units that I helped create, that I helped stand up, these units. So I was put into a very unique position, and the reason why I was put in this unique position was I would be selected and placed in 2 places where I could do, you could say, the black operation side of things.
Okay, but you were put into a unit, you said it was somewhat sophisticated, and there was, I'm assuming, no one else at your young age or whatever?
At that time, no. A little bit, about a year later, they started to bring in a few other people my age, but at that time, there was no one close to my age.
Okay, and so how were you treated in those units? These are, I'm assuming, the normal special forces.
Very well. Very well. Well,
what does it mean to be treated very well?
Well, I mean, okay. Even back then, hazing would occur. You get a new guy in, and maybe they tie you up and, smack you around a little bit. They're not doing it out of being malicious. It's kind of like a welcome to the club. That didn't really occur with me. There were a lot of missions that took place that would normally be deemed as questionable or not according to regulation, where if someone else normally Coast Guard did it, they would probably receive some kind of non-judicial punishment, as it's called, and I didn't receive any of that. Basically, I could get away with anything and not receive any kind of consequences.
Okay, did you have friends in the unit?
Eventually I made friends.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay, and so this is your so-called normal, even though it's special ops, this was your so-called normal above board operation.
Yes.
And this was, at this age you were 18, you're going out on search and rescue in the, what, Oregon, Washington?
Off the Oregon coast, yes. Oregon-Washington coast, yes.
Okay, and then what's the Black Ops side? When did that start?
The Black Ops didn't really start until '99. So really my first, you could say basically my first 2 years, because I didn't really report to my first unit until it was December 12th of '96. So that's when I was introduced to Operation Spyglass in 1999.
Was it called that?
Yes.
So it was a Black Ops program. Did you know it was Black Ops as opposed to normal?
Oh yeah. I would receive the full briefing. They told me exactly what was going on. They also explained to me how it was used, as there was the regular military known Operation Spyglass, which consisted of mainly Special Task Force for, international drug running, or special interest people that were war criminals, or criminals that perhaps, like the U.S. Marshals couldn't obtain, so they would ask the military, which the military does this a lot. They'll go in and out of countries and grab people of special interest. Not in my lab, but it's for, other purposes.
All right, but were you going into other countries?
At that time, I was based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, which is actually one of the main hubs for the Pacific Rim operations. But at that time, I was doing a lot of work in Canada. There was a special interest with some targets in Canada. But then there was a few times where I was taken to Hawaii and a few other places around the rim.
Okay.
But I was based mainly out of, when I was doing that operation, it was Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay, when you say there were targets in Canada, what do you mean by a target?
Oh gosh, that is such a detailed thing, and I just spent 2 hours on an interview talking about this. Military abductions, and I'll try to be brief, there are several targets. One, you have people that, let's say you have someone that is a remote viewer that was brought up as I was and is part of one of the many sub-projects under Mark Ultra. Well, let's say you have a scientist that was working on it. This said person, maybe they go out on a mission, or they defect, they run away. Programming is broken down and they don't want to be part of it anymore. So the team I was with do one of two things. We either terminate the subject, or we go and we grab them and we bring them back for reprogramming because they're still an asset and they still need to be used. So termination or military abduction.
Okay, and
that's one of many reasons for an abduction.
All right. Did you know that they were going to be terminated? Did you participate in the termination?
Yes.
And did you know who it was? In other words, did you know that this was an asset that had gone wrong, so to speak?
We would know all the information. We would receive their dossier because we had to know, pretty much everything about them.
Okay, and is this the Black Ops side?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the Coast Guard side had nothing to do with this side.
Okay.
That was just that. You could say that was my cover. That was my front.
But you participated in the front organization.
Yes.
For only 2 years, or simultaneously the whole time?
Simultaneously the whole time. Because there were some Coast Guard operations that worked together. It was a balance. They do this with people like me, and it's not just the Coast Guard. They have people like me that went into the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and the Marines. Sometimes I would even have them go into the CIA, FBI. They were infiltrated everywhere.
So let me just describe what I think you're talking about, and you tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay.
So they would send you on an operation that was an official kind of operation that was on the sort of official side.
Yes.
And your group would be working all the different angles, but you would basically be sort of like a double agent, and you would go out on sort of other missions that were tangential to that particular mission.
Exactly. Think of it as the known operation, the sanctioned operation, was the umbrella to disguise what we were really doing. And it wasn't always a solo mission. You know, there was a team, but it wasn't until 2001 that things really kicked off for me as far as Project Seagate, and then the team that I was with, that I was in charge of, where things got very in depth. And basically 2001 was the set point for everything that I had done up until that point, from the 3 years old up until 2000. There was three things that I forgot to mention, just because there's so much, and I'm trying to get everything in the allotted time. So let me just go with, let's start with the scar. There's a scar right here. I'm sure you can probably see it.
Yes.
That has been a mystery. The scar, here's the story I was told, that during delivery I somehow got stuck, and they had to use metal forceps to grab my head in order to pull me out, you could say. I've had doctors examine it. I've even done a lot of research on the internet, because you can actually look up like forceps scars on babies that have had that actual occurrence. None of them match this. This scar on occasions has raised, it's done things, changed color, even changed shape. Now, I have quite a few scars on my body, and usually even a little trace amount of hair will grow over scar tissue, at least the ones that I have. Yet I was born with this, and hair has never grown over it. Now, again, a lot of this is theory, but the fact that my parents don't remember the day I was born, each give me a different story. And when I asked my dad in person, "Dad, tell me about how I got this scar, and tell me about when I was born," he started going off on an explanation, which I already knew, was actually about a situation with my brother when he was born. And I said, so then I thought, no, Dad, okay, maybe he's older, maybe he's... I said, no, come on, Dad, tell me. And then he stopped, and he couldn't remember. And my mother can't remember. And then I'm told that when I was delivered and there was this procedure was done to me, that my mother didn't do anything about it. What mother wouldn't freak out if their newborn baby comes out and has got like a big gash in their head? I had been told by one inside source who, it was basically, he gave me a brief message and then disappeared, that some kind of surgical procedure was done to me while I was in womb. Many theories have come out about what exactly they did. Everything from some people saying, oh, I think it was genetic modification, to an implant, to whatever. I don't know, I'm still working on that one. But
okay. What hospital were you at?
Well, my birth certificate says the Kaiser Permanente in Fontana, California. But when you have family members saying, Aaron, you really need to question the legitimacy of that, and even another family member saying that they have doubts that I was even born on September 6th, 1978. Family members that I do trust, and I don't trust only but a few of my family, which I'm sorry to say, but it's true.
Okay. Are you talking, I mean, I don't understand. I thought you lived in Oregon.
I did. Again, here's what I was told. I should have said this in the beginning. I was told that I was born in Fontana, California, and that when I was still an infant, I don't know how old, I think I was told 6 months old, my family suddenly moved up to Oregon.
Okay. And are you younger than your brother and sister?
I'm the youngest.
Okay.
Yes. My sister's the oldest, my brother's the middle, and I'm the youngest.
So, in essence, your birth would have been the most recent for your parents in the timeline, because you were the youngest.
Oh, yes.
So, it's interesting that they don't remember.
Did
your mother have a story associated with your birth or not?
I've heard several different things. My sister's asked, and she's heard several different stories. We don't know which one is the fact.
Okay, and I don't know if you want to answer this question, but did your mother use medication?
No.
And what did she do for a living, if anything?
She, if I remember right, gave up college to be with my dad. And here's another thing. My dad can't even remember how he met my mother. Another thing that I recently found out, along with a whole...
Is your father got a drinking problem?
No.
Is he on medication?
No. He doesn't even smoke cigarettes.
Interesting. But he has these memory losses.
He's got a lot of memory losses.
Okay, so let's go to the next thing, which is, you said, okay, we've got the scar, we've got the birth. I guess the only third thing was that you said you just wanted to make sure and say that when you were young, around the age of 9, you started going on operations?
Oh, no, that was
as an observer?
That was older. I'm sorry. This was something I wanted, and this directly related to the military abduction side of the unit that I was with when we were under Operation Spyglass. It didn't happen all the time, but on maybe 4 or 5 occasions, just me, not the other people, the other kids, they were assigned to do other things later on. I would actually participate as an observer to live exercises, live military abductions.
When you say live military abductions, can you explain a little more about that?
Imagine, you know how people can go on a ride along with the police? They go to the police station, they ask they're interested in becoming a cop, so they don't wear any guns or anything, but they ride with the cop and they do a full shift. Imagine it's something similar to that, but not all night, just for one operation where you're observing what they're doing. It's kind of like furthermore acclimating to what is to come for you.
And how old were you?
That happened between 16 and 17.
Okay, and when you say a military abduction, did you ride in a UFO, for example?
I didn't ride in any UFOs at that time.
Okay, but did you ride in a craft of any
Yes.
kind to go on the abduction?
Yes.
What kind of craft?
On 2 occasions, it was a military helicopter. I was younger then. I didn't really know. I don't know what kind, but it was definitely a helicopter. Where I stayed in the helicopter. That's the thing. I didn't like go with them, and I was just there as an observer. That's it. It was just.
Okay, but
I'm not even sure really the exact. The only thing I can guess was that it was so that I would get an idea of how this ran.
Okay, but I'm assuming you went in the helicopter. There's not a lot of room in a helicopter. They're picking up. What are they doing? Picking up.
They're picking up
a child.
On 2 of the occasions, it was women. It was young women.
Okay, so they pick them up, and you don't go with them to do the pickup. You stay in the helicopter.
I stayed in the
They bring the
helicopter.
person into the helicopter.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And we went to the facility. I stayed in the helicopter. They dropped them off, and then I was returned home.
Okay, and when you say the facility, where was the facility? Do you know?
This facility that we went to was in northern Washington, somewhere in the area of Fort Lewis, which is a major army base up there.
Okay, so you think it was on an army base?
I don't remember. I mean, it was definitely a facility of some kind. I remember buildings. I remember military personnel being there. I remember that was somewhere up in. The only reason I remember this is because in when was it? In the early part of 2006, I went up to Seattle because I had somehow come in contact with someone I worked with prior to. And this is when I'm not remember anything. I don't remember how we wound up, but the person recognized me somehow through some means. So I drove up to Seattle, and I remember driving up past on I-5, going past the Dow Chemical headquarters, and then Fort Lewis, and then remember getting some pretty intense visions or flashbacks. But again, at this time, you have to remember, really from 2006 until the beginning of 2008, I just thought I was nuts. I mean, when you're waking up with cold sweats, when you're walking around and then next thing you know, you're in a town or another state and you don't remember how you got there, or when you're waking up and you've got blood on your hands and you don't remember how you got that. I mean, that's a pretty hard thing for someone to deal with, that they have no idea even what they don't even remember their childhood. They don't remember a year before that.
Okay, so this is actually moving things forward quite a bit, because at the point that we left off, now to fast forward to this point where you were going through these programs, you were already going on missions in Canada, that you're talking about picking up these people that were basically renegade agents of the government that had gone bad.
And not all of them were. Sometimes it was people of special interest, sometimes it was children. It was a wide variety, but you know, that would take a lot to... It took me 2 hours in an interview just a week ago to explain some of it.
When you say you went to pick these people up and bring them back, you brought them back to where? Okay,
when I was actually fully part of doing military abductions, we would receive directives and orders, and you could say a dossier on a certain person and or group of people, because it does happen in group settings too. We would know what reason it was for. We would go, we would find them. We didn't always know where they were. We had to locate them, and then we would bring them back to a designated installation. Sometimes it was underground. Sometimes it was a regular military installation. Sometimes it was an above ground, you could say, secret installation. One of the common places that I would take people to is an underground facility that is in the northern bay of San Francisco, at what is above ground, called a naval weapons munition base, but actually there's a much greater facility underneath. Okay.
And when you took the people there, first of all, how did you go? Again, are we talking, because you said that at first you said it was sort of half the normal part of the Coast Guard division, and then the other part you said was like the Black Ops.
Yes.
So in what kind of vehicle at this point were you going?
Okay, at this point, this was definitely highly advanced vehicle. TR-3Bs.
The black triangles?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Were commonly used. We use those a lot. The thing about those specific craft is that light configuration can be changed to make it look like a normal plane, and even the sound emitted from it can be altered. So if it's really dark out, what you see lights that appear to be maybe like a 747. It sounds like a 747. I'm not saying this is always the case, but there's always that chance that it could be a TR-3B. It could even, well, of course, there's a new model now. The old model has already been, is far outdated. They got the new Aurora, which is oh, I have it somewhere with the classification, but it's far more advanced. I mean, we're talking anywhere in the world in under 12 minutes.
Okay, but okay, I'm assuming you're not an expert on military aircraft, but at the same time you rode in this vehicle. So can you describe anything about its capability in terms of, you know, in other words, could it, at that time, and we're talking, I don't know, what year?
I know what you're talking about. We're talking, I mean, I rode those things off and on from 1999 until, you know, 2005. Okay. So, and I know what you're referring. Directional, yes, multi-directional. They could move any way because of the.
And what about in terms of the speed? Do you know how fast it could go? You know, could it go faster than light speed?
I know that on some occasions. I remember going from the United States to Azerbaijan, that country, and we reached it in under 30 minutes. And that's pretty much on the other side of the globe.
Yeah. So these abductions that you were doing, were they, in other words, you said terminate or bring them back?
That was two of the categories under the conditions of, yes. Termination, well, a termination was not a military abduction. Termination was a termination. The whole point of the abduction was to take them alive, bring them back for whatever purpose. But there were also a scope of things. There's also, it goes on to, and again, I described this in this other interview I just did, where you're talking about occasionally people slip through the cracks. Children, even adults. Every human, every baby that's born in the United States, DNA sample is taken. That DNA sample then goes into a network. That network can be accessed by special projects. Through decades and decades, they have managed to where, knowing the history of the family lineage, they can tell on the basic DNA level the possibilities of what this child is capable of. It's not a perfect system though. Occasionally children do slip through the cracks. So let's just use an example. Someone hears about maybe a child with telepathy or doing telekinesis, or even, you hear of a little girl that's at a shopping mall that screams and all of a sudden windows shatter. Well then, one of the many special projects takes interest and they want that girl, they want that young woman, they want that man. So they say, okay, go get him. If my team selected to do so, we're given the information, we go, we find this person, we bring them back to whatever designated facility. Now they may not be gone forever. It could be because you have what's called subjects of opportunity. They're taken, they're used for whatever purpose, we give them false implanted memories, slip them something, they're returned back. And maybe we never use them again. Maybe we decide we need them in a month. Or not for years. That's one of many.
Did you dress up a certain way? Were you working with ETs?
Yes. There were 3 conditions. Now you had actual plain daylight abductions where you could either be masked as like a police or some kind of official member, and where you draw them into a situation to grab them, or I could be dressed like this. Obviously I didn't have the earrings or as many of the tattoos at the time, but we would use several different drugs. One of them was called scopamine. Scopamine I could literally take and dip it on the edge of a toothpick, and let's say you're my target, Gary. I've tracked you down, you're at a cafe. I can either wait till you get to go use the restroom and I could put some of this minute amount in your coffee, or I could literally actually bump into you and rub it on your skin. I then wait for it to come into effect. Then I walk over to you, and this is how this drug works. It's very dangerous. I say, hi Carrie, I'm Aaron. Now, you don't know me at all. You've never met me, but you react, you say, hi. I said, well listen, come with me. You come with me happily. You pay your check, you grab your purse, you come with me. Willingly, I take you in my car or in your car or whatever. I take you to a facility, then whatever's been designated for you happens. If you are returned back, you're returned back and you have no memory. That's what the drug does. It's a very volatile, very dangerous drug, and it was one of the, you could say it was one of the drugs of my choice when I was doing abductions.
Okay, so were you the leader of these groups?
The team that happened after 2001, yes, I was the team leader.
Why were you the team leader? Do you know?
Because I was really good at my job.
What does being good at that job mean?
I had a very high success rate. It was above 97%.
Okay, and did you have you didn't have the earrings and the tattoo at that time?
No, I didn't have the earrings. I didn't have the tattoos on my neck. I didn't have them on my hands, but I did have a lot on my arms. You were talking about uniform. I don't know if I sent you a picture of the uniform that I wore, and I was able to obtain parts of my old uniform, one of my old uniforms through some other means. Black gloves, full black turnout gear, flag vest, hood, goggles, whole 9 yards. We weren't allowed to wear watches. You weren't allowed to wear anything that would separate you, even no markations, no American flag, no U.S. Coast Guard, no nothing. When I was actually on facility at Pro-C, we did have a certain symbol that we wore, which was the Seagate symbol. But so we were completely black. We were non-denomination. I did have 2 females on my team. When they were suited up, you couldn't even tell that they were women.
Okay, but you can't take somebody and rub them with this drug in being suited up like that, right?
No, that in that uniform was strictly night operations. That was done for night ops.
Okay, and what is a night op?
A night op would be, well, let's use this place for example. You're here, you're at home, you're asleep, and the moment of opportunity, we've received the green light. So if this place had an alarm system, we would obviously disable it. I would have, and for this kind of operation, I'd probably only bring maybe a couple more people, maybe 2 or 3 other people on my team. We would have some come up the balcony this way. We would have, and then come up through the front entrance. We would go into where you were asleep. We would shoot our cocktail into you, which would be a combination of either scopamine, GBH, LSD, or BZ, or one of, and there's reasons for that. If we wanted to make it appear that was an alien abduction, to create a hallucinogenic effect. And then we would carry you out, we would lock everything up, take you to the vehicle, the craft, and then we'd be gone.
What about the neighbors and dogs and things like that?
Oh, we weren't concerned with that.
Why?
Because we could get in and get out without them noticing.
Okay.
Complete in and out without any sound. You know, even being able to, you know, you're talking about even picking a lock at night. Dogs will even sleep through that. I mean, you can be that quiet.
Okay. So you were going on these operations that you were calling my labs, military abductions, and you said you're working with ETs. Which
Grays.
ETs? Grays?
Grace.
Okay, and do you recall this, or
No,
is this...
I do recall some of this. These are things that I had a little bit difficulty coming to terms with, or even accepting, no more than a couple years ago. And again, and a lot of this, okay, a lot of these memories were reconfirmed when I was called back to duty in 2008, when I still didn't know who I was, and all of a sudden I've got these military personnel who are taking me to Camp Pendleton, where I'm meeting with this general, and he literally opens up what he had of a dossier of me, and they're showing operations, they're showing images, they're showing things that I was a part of. They showed me that on my NSA file it says, Petty Officer, 2nd Class Aaron E. Mccollum, serial number 13-03957, killed in action 1999. So according to whoever doesn't need to know about me, I technically have died in action at some point in 1999.
But you're still running around town with this name and so on and so forth. Okay, I mean, because I also want to address why you've been allowed to get away with what you're doing.
I haven't entirely been allowed to get away with what I've been doing. I have received threats. My certain family members have received threats, and I myself have had attempts on my life as recently as, that had to have been 5 months ago, when I was hit by a car at I mean, not full speed obviously, but the witnesses said that the car was going 35, 40 miles an hour and it hit me dead on. And
were you in a car at the time it hit you?
No, I was walking. It hit me straight on. I was going across a crosswalk where the light was go for me, and the car peeled around the corner and then came up, and it just happened so fast, and I flew over the car, hit the ground. I blacked out. I woke up in the ER, and with many times before, the doctor sat there and said, I have no idea how you don't have any broken bones. You don't have any stitches. I didn't even have really any bruises. I pretty much walked away from it. They took me because they didn't know who I was, and it was, standard procedure, obviously. The ambulance shows up, they put me in the neck brace. I do remember telling them, no, I'm fine. They're like, no, please. So I'm just like, okay, I'll let you guys go along with this.
Did you question at any point what you were doing?
No. You don't question when you're